The emergency beacon cut through space like a knife, its desperate cry reaching every human outpost within light years. The message was simple but terrifying: 40,000 innocent people were about to die, and nobody was coming to save them. Commander Jake Morrison had been drinking his morning coffee when the alert came through. Now he stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, reading the translation over and over, hoping he'd missed something. He hadn't. "Sir, the Kellen research station is completely cut off," Lieutenant Emily Carter said from her post. Her voice was steady, but Morrison could hear the tension underneath. The Nexus hit them with everything they had. Orbital platforms destroyed, defense fleet scattered, communication arrays barely functioning. Morrison studied the tactical display. The Kellen station wasn't just any research facility, it was home to families, scientists, children who had never seen war. Floating cities where people lived peaceful lives, studying stars and growing food in zero-gravity gardens. Now it was all burning. "What's the Galactic Assembly saying?" Morrison asked, though he already knew the answer. "Standard response, sir. They're forming a committee to discuss the situation. Estimated response time is 3 weeks, maybe 4 if they can get the Alterian fleet to cooperate." 3 weeks. Morrison had seen what the Nexus did to captured stations. There wouldn't be anyone left to save in 3 weeks. The bridge crew waited in silence. They all knew what Morrison was thinking, and they all knew what it would mean. The human fleet in this sector was small, just 12 ships against what intelligence reported as a full Nexus battle group. 50 ships, maybe more, all bigger and more advanced than anything humans had built. Chief Navigator Tom Bradley spoke up from his station. "Sir, if we burn the engines at maximum power, we can reach the Kellen system in 18 hours. Maybe 16 if we're willing to risk some serious damage to the drive systems." Morrison walked to the main view screen, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, families were huddled in emergency shelters, listening to the sound of their world being torn apart. Children were crying for parents who might already be dead. Scientists who had spent their lives trying to make the galaxy a better place were watching their work destroyed by raiders who killed for profit. The smart move was obvious. Follow protocol, wait for orders, let the assembly handle it. That's what any reasonable species would do. But humans weren't reasonable, and they never had been. "Lieutenant Carter, open a channel to all ships in the task force," Morrison ordered. "Channel open, sir." Morrison took a deep breath. "This is Commander Morrison to all vessels. By now you've all seen the distress call from the Kellen research station. 40,000 civilians are trapped, under attack by Nexus raiders. The assembly is 3 weeks out. We're 18 hours out." He paused, looking around the bridge at his crew. Young faces, mostly, volunteers who had signed up to explore the galaxy and ended up becoming its guardians. "I'm not going to lie to you. This isn't our fight according to the rulebook. The Kellens aren't human allies. We have no treaty obligations, no strategic interests, no orders from command. What we have is a bunch of families about to die while bureaucrats debate proper procedures." The comm channel crackled with static, but Morrison could feel his captains listening on 11 other ships. "Every ship that follows me into that system might not come back. The Nexus have more ships, bigger guns, better shields. They've been raiding outer colonies for 50 years while we were still figuring out how to build warp drives. Any captain who wants to maintain position here and wait for assembly orders has my full support and no judgment." Morrison straightened his uniform and made his choice. "But I'm going. Because 40,000 people are going to die if somebody doesn't help them, and we're the only somebody who can get there in time. Because that's what humans do, we help people, even when it's stupid, even when it's dangerous, even when nobody asked us to." He nodded to Lieutenant Carter, who was already laying in the course. "All ships, maximum burn to the Kellen system. We've got 18 hours to figure out how to beat impossible odds." Morrison smiled grimly. Just another Tuesday for the human fleet. The stars shifted as 12 human warships turned toward battle, racing against time to save people they'd never met from an enemy that had never known defeat. The moment the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace, Jake Morrison felt his heart sink. The Kellen research station looked like someone had taken a hammer to a delicate sculpture. What had once been a beautiful collection of spinning rings and crystal domes was now a mess of twisted metal and escaping gas. Debris fields sparkled in the light of the system's star, each piece representing someone's home, someone's life's work, someone's dreams. But it was the 6 massive ships surrounding the wreckage that made Morrison's blood run cold. Nexus dreadnoughts were legends in this part of the galaxy, kilometer-long monsters bristling with weapons that could crack moons. Each one was easily 3 times the size of Morrison's largest ship, and their dark hulls seemed to absorb light itself. "Holy hell," whispered Lieutenant Carter from her station. "Sir, I'm reading energy signatures I've never seen before. Those ships are packing some serious firepower." Morrison nodded grimly. Intelligence reports had been right about one thing: the Nexus didn't mess around. These weren't raiders or pirates looking for easy loot. This was a full military operation designed to wipe the Kellen station off the map. The enemy response came quickly, broadcast on all frequencies in perfect galactic standard. The voice was cold, mechanical, completely without emotion. "Unknown vessels, you are entering a restricted combat zone. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. This system is now under Nexus control by right of conquest." Captain Lisa Walker's voice came through the fleet channel from her destroyer Phoenix. "Sir, they're trying to intimidate us with fancy words. Look at their formation, it's straight out of an academy textbook. Perfect spacing, overlapping fields of fire, concentrated firepower." She paused, and Morrison could hear the grin in her voice. "They have no idea what they're dealing with." Morrison studied his tactical display. The Nexus ships were arranged in a classic defensive screen around the station, exactly like any civilized species would deploy. Efficient, logical, and completely predictable. It was the kind of formation that worked perfectly against other civilized species who fought by the rules. Humans had never been good at following rules. "All ships, this is Morrison," he announced over the fleet channel. "Execute pattern Delta on my mark. Remember what we're here for, those people down there are counting on us. We don't need to destroy every Nexus ship, we just need to get them away from the civilians." Pattern Delta wasn't something you'd find in any military manual. It was pure human insanity, developed during the early colonial wars when human ships were always outnumbered and outgunned. Instead of maintaining formation like sensible beings, human ships would scatter in seemingly random directions, making themselves harder to target while creating chaos in enemy formations. "Sir, I'm picking up massive life signs from the station's lower sections," reported Ensign Bradley from sensors. "Looks like about 38,000 people crammed into emergency shelters. Atmosphere is holding, but barely." Morrison felt a spark of hope. They weren't too late, not yet. The Nexus commander's voice came again, more insistent this time. "Final warning, unknown vessels. Withdraw or face annihilation. You are outnumbered 6 to 12. Your technology is inferior. Surrender is your only logical option." Morrison almost laughed. Logic. These aliens thought warfare was about math, about comparing numbers and specifications. They had never fought an enemy that grew up on a world where everything from the weather to the wildlife was actively trying to kill them. "Pattern Delta, execute now," Morrison ordered. What happened next would have looked like complete chaos to any outside observer. 12 human ships suddenly broke formation and accelerated in 12 different directions, their engines burning at maximum power. Some dove toward the planet, others climbed toward the system's outer edge, and a few seemed to be heading directly into the sun. The Nexus commanders were caught completely off guard. Their perfect formation was designed to handle enemies who attacked in predictable patterns, not maniacs who seemed to be fleeing in every direction at once. "Are they retreating?" one Nexus captain asked over their communication channels, which human intelligence was happily intercepting. Impossible, replied another. No species retreats in 12 different directions. That's when Captain Walker's Phoenix came screaming out of the sun's glare, her weapons blazing as she dove straight at the nearest dreadnought. The Nexus ship's shields flared as human plasma cannons found their mark, and suddenly the aliens realized they weren't dealing with a retreat at all. Weapons free, Morrison announced calmly. Show them what happens when you threaten innocent people. The real battle was about to begin. The Defiance screamed through space like a meteor made of steel and fury, her hull plates glowing red-hot from Nexus energy weapons. Commander Morrison gripped his command chair as the ship bucked and twisted under enemy fire, but his eyes never left the tactical display. Every hit his ship took meant the Nexus weren't shooting at the rescue transports racing toward the station. Hull breach on Deck 7, reported damage control. We've lost 2 gun turrets and the port shield generator is down to 30%. Keep us moving, Morrison ordered. As long as we're drawing fire, those transports have a chance. What the Nexus couldn't understand was that humans had grown up on a planet that spent millions of years trying to kill them. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, predators with teeth like swords, diseases that wiped out entire continents. Humans had learned long ago that sometimes the only way to win was to be willing to lose everything. The Phoenix suddenly broke from her attack run and did something that made every alien commander freeze in shock. Captain Lisa Walker aimed her destroyer directly at the nearest Nexus heavy cruiser and punched her engines to maximum power. Walker, what are you doing? Morrison's voice crackled over the comm. Giving our Marines a door to knock on, Walker replied calmly, as if ramming a ship 10 times her size was perfectly normal Tuesday behavior. The Phoenix struck the Nexus cruiser like a spear through armor, her reinforced bow punching deep into the alien ship's hull. Both vessels shuddered from the impact, locked together in a deadly embrace as atmosphere screamed out of the breach. That's when Lieutenant Colonel Nick Torres and his Marine unit did something that no civilized species had ever attempted. They launched themselves directly from the Phoenix's airlocks into the gaping hole in the enemy ship, using nothing but powered armor and pure human stubbornness. Go, go, go. Torres shouted over the comm as his Marines jetted through the vacuum between ships. Nexus crew members who had survived the collision watched in horror as armored humans came floating through their shattered bulkheads like avenging angels. The Nexus had never encountered boarding actions like this. In civilized warfare, you damaged enemy ships until they surrendered. You didn't crash into them and then send soldiers crawling through the wreckage like some kind of primitive barbarians. These creatures are completely insane, one Nexus commander transmitted to his fleet. His voice was high with panic. They're using their own ships as weapons. They're boarding us through hull breaches. This isn't warfare, it's madness. But the real rescue mission was happening elsewhere. Commander Rachel Hayes piloted her assault transport Mercy through the debris field surrounding the Kellen station, dodging chunks of metal the size of buildings while Nexus fighters swarmed around her like angry wasps. "Ma'am, we're taking heavy fire," reported her pilot, Sergeant Dan Kim. "Port engine is hit, and we're losing pressure in cargo bay too." "How long until we reach the station?" Hayes asked, already pulling on her environmental suit. 3 minutes if we stay on this course, but those fighters are going to tear us apart." Hayes looked at her loadout one more time. Rescue equipment, medical supplies, emergency rations for 40,000 people. Everything they'd need to save an entire civilization, if they could just get close enough. "Stay on course," she ordered. "Those people have been waiting for help for 3 days. We're not going to let them down now." The Mercy shuddered as another fighter pass raked her hull with energy fire. Warning lights flashed red across the cockpit, and Hayes could hear the groaning of stressed metal. But Kim kept them flying straight toward the station's emergency docking port. Behind them, the space battle raged with increasing intensity. The Nexus were learning that fighting humans was nothing like fighting other civilized species. When a Nexus ship was damaged, it withdrew for repairs. When a human ship was damaged, it looked for something to ram. The destroyer Ranger lost her main engines but managed to crash into a Nexus dreadnought's weapon array. The cruiser Hammer had half her hull blown away but kept firing until her ammunition was gone. Every human ship fought like it was the last ship in the galaxy, and every human crew member acted like saving those civilians was worth any sacrifice. Docking clamps engaged, Kim reported as the Mercy finally reached the station. But ma'am, we've got multiple hull breaches and the dock is partially collapsed. Hayes was already heading for the airlock, her rescue team behind her. Then we'd better work fast. 40,000 people are counting on us, and I'll be damned if we let them down. Outside, the battle continued to rage, but inside the station, the real work was about to begin. Commander Rachel Hayes stepped through the airlock into what looked like the inside of a tornado. The Kellen Research Station's main corridor was a twisted mess of bent metal beams and sparking electrical systems. Emergency lights flickered red and orange, casting dancing shadows on walls that had been beautiful murals just days ago. Now they were scarred by weapon fire and structural collapse. Jesus, whispered Corporal Danny Torres, Hayes' second in command. How is anyone still alive in here? The answer came as a group of Kellen civilians emerged from a side passage, supporting an injured family member between them. The Kellens were tall, graceful beings with pale blue skin and large eyes that seemed to hold all the sadness in the galaxy. When they saw the humans, their faces lit up with desperate hope. You came, one of them said in broken English. We heard fighting outside, but we thought no one would come for us. Hayes felt her throat tighten. These people had been hiding in emergency shelters for 3 days, listening to their world being destroyed, probably thinking they'd been forgotten by the galaxy. Now they were looking at her rescue team like they were miracle workers. We're getting you out of here, Hayes said firmly. All of you. How many people are still in the lower sections? Maybe 8,000 in the main shelter, replied the Kellen elder. But the passages are blocked. The structure is failing. We cannot reach them. Hayes looked at her scanner readings and felt her blood run cold. The section they needed to reach was 3 levels down, through corridors that were barely holding together. Her equipment showed massive structural damage, toxic gas leaks, and gravity systems that kept cutting in and out. Sergeant Blake, she called to her demolitions expert. Can we blast through the debris blocking level 3? Probably, Blake replied, studying his own readings. But ma'am, any explosion might bring down what's left of this section. We could kill everyone we're trying to save. Hayes closed her eyes for a moment, thinking. Above them, she could hear the distant rumble of the space battle as human ships fought impossible odds to give her team time. Commander Morrison was up there, probably watching his fleet get torn apart, all so these civilians could have a chance. We go through by hand, she decided. Teams of 4, maximum loads. We carry everyone who can't walk, and we don't leave anyone behind. For the next 2 hours, Hayes and her rescue teams did something that would become legend in the outer colonies. They crawled through passages so damaged that breathing required oxygen masks. They carried Kellen civilians who weighed twice as much as they did through areas where the artificial gravity failed randomly. When corridors collapsed behind them, they found new routes. When toxic gases leaked into their path, they sealed their suits and kept moving. Corporal Amy Chin found herself carrying a Kellen child through a section where the floor had partially given way, stepping carefully on twisted metal beams while debris rained down around them. The child was crying for her parents, speaking in a language Chin didn't understand, but the fear was universal. It's okay, sweetie, Chin whispered, even though her translator couldn't handle the child's language. We're going to find your mom and dad. I promise. Meanwhile, Sergeant Rick Johnson was working with a team to free an entire family trapped under a collapsed ceiling beam. The metal weighed several tons, but Johnson and 3 other Marines managed to lift it just enough for the Kellens to crawl free. How are you so strong? Asked one of the rescued scientists in amazement. Johnson just grinned. We lift weights for fun where we come from. Above them, the space battle was reaching a critical point. Hayes could hear the updates crackling through her comm system as human ships reported increasing damage. The Defiance had lost half her weapon systems. The Phoenix was running on backup power. 2 destroyers had been completely destroyed, their crews lost with their ships. But every report ended the same way: they were still fighting, still buying time for the rescue operation. Last group located, reported Corporal Torres from the deepest part of the station. Got about 200 civilians here, including some who are badly injured. Bring them all, Hayes ordered. I don't care if we have to carry them one by one. Hours later, as the last transport ship pulled away from the collapsing station, Hayes did a final headcount. 40,000 Kellen civilians, every single person who had been on that station, now safe aboard human rescue ships. All civilians accounted for, she reported to Commander Morrison. No one left behind. Morrison's voice came back immediately, but Hayes could hear the strain in it. Outstanding work, Commander. Now get those transports out of here. We've got company. Hayes looked at her scanner and felt her heart sink. 12 new Nexus ships had just arrived, fresh and undamaged, while the human fleet was barely holding together. The smart thing would be to run. But humans had never been smart when it came to protecting innocent people. The 12 fresh Nexus ships dropped out of hyperspace like vultures circling wounded prey. Commander Morrison watched them on his tactical display, each new contact making his situation worse. His fleet was down to 8 ships, most of them barely holding together with emergency repairs and sheer stubbornness. Sir, the transport ships are clear, reported Lieutenant Carter. All civilians safely away from the combat zone. Morrison nodded. That was what mattered. 40,000 innocent people were now speeding toward safety in human-protected space. Everything else was just details. New contacts are hailing us, Carter continued. They're demanding immediate surrender. Morrison almost laughed. The Nexus still didn't understand what they were dealing with. Humans didn't surrender when civilians were at stake, especially not after coming this far. Open a channel, Morrison ordered. The Nexus fleet commander appeared on screen, his reptilian features twisted with arrogance. Human vessels, you are hopelessly outnumbered. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Morrison straightened his uniform and looked directly into the camera. This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Terran Defense Force. We've completed our mission here. Every civilian has been evacuated. Your targets are gone. Then withdraw, the Nexus commander hissed. This system belongs to us now. Morrison shook his head. See, that's where we have a problem. Those transport ships need time to reach the hyperspace jump point. About 2 hours, give or take. So we're going to stay right here and make sure nobody follows them. The alien's eyes widened. You would fight 20 ships with 8 damaged vessels. For beings not even of your own species. That's exactly what we're going to do, Morrison replied calmly. Because that's what humans do. The battle that followed became legend throughout the galaxy. 8 human ships, most of them running on backup power and prayers, faced down 20 fresh enemy vessels in a fight that should have lasted minutes. Instead, it went on for 4 hours. Captain Lisa Walker, her destroyer Phoenix still locked in a deadly embrace with the Nexus cruiser, turned her ship into a weapons platform. Even though her engines were dead and half her crew was working in vacuum suits, she kept her guns firing until the ammunition ran out. Then she started ramming other Nexus ships with the wreckage. The cruiser Hammer lost her main weapon systems in the first exchange, so her captain ordered the crew to manually fire the torpedo tubes. Teams of sailors ran through corridors filled with smoke and sparks, carrying heavy torpedoes by hand to launch them at point-blank range. Lieutenant Colonel Nick Torres and his Marines, still fighting inside the captured Nexus cruiser, took control of the ship's weapon systems and started firing on their own former fleet. The Nexus crew couldn't believe that humans were using captured ships against them in the same battle. But it was the smaller moments that truly showed what humans were capable of. When the destroyer Ranger lost her bridge, the engine room crew took control and kept fighting. When the Defiance's medical bay was hit, the wounded refused evacuation and kept working at their stations. Every human ship became a fortress that had to be taken deck by deck, room by room. The Nexus had superior numbers and better technology, but they had never faced an enemy that treated impossible odds as just another day at the office. Their formations broke apart as human ships refused to die when they should have, kept fighting when logic said they were finished, and somehow kept protecting those transport ships no matter what. When the battle finally ended, the space around the Kellen system was filled with drifting wreckage from both fleets. But the human transports were safely away, and the surviving Nexus ships were limping back to their own space, carrying stories that would spread throughout the galaxy. 3 weeks later, the bureaucrats at the Galactic Assembly were having heated debates about the human response to the Kellen crisis. Some wanted to censure humanity for acting without proper authorization. Others argued that the humans had saved 40,000 lives while the Assembly was still forming committees. The debate ended when Elder Keth, the senior survivor from the research station, addressed the full Assembly. His words were simple but powerful. The humans came for us when no one else would. They crossed half the galaxy to save people they had never met, people who could offer them nothing in return. They fought battles they could not win because it was the right thing to do. They asked for no payment, no treaties, no territorial concessions. They simply helped because help was needed. The elder paused, looking around the great chamber at representatives from dozens of species. These are not primitives from some savage world. These are the finest beings any of us have ever encountered. If this assembly has any wisdom, it will welcome them as full members and pray that when our own people need help, humans will answer that call too. The vote was unanimous. Humanity was granted full membership in the Galactic Assembly, along with a formal request to expand human patrol duties throughout frontier space. Admiral Patricia Stone read Commander Morrison's after-action report with growing amazement. It was exactly what she expected from her officers: brief, professional, and completely understated. Mission accomplished. 40,000 civilians rescued. Minor fleet damage. Returning to patrol station. Minor fleet damage. Stone shook her head. 3 ships had been total losses, and every surviving vessel would need months of repairs. But to humans, that was just the price of doing what was right. News of the Kellen rescue spread throughout the galaxy faster than any official report. Soon, every spacer in every port was talking about the Deathworlders who fought impossible battles to save strangers. The humans hadn't just won a victory, they had announced to the galaxy that Earth's children were now among the stars, and they would answer any call for help, no matter how dangerous. The age of human guardianship had begun.